All right, here we go. I'm going to bring you through 10 years in 13 minutes, so brace yourself. Ready? All right, in 2013 to 2014, we set out as an office. Is Sarah Gallup here? No, okay, this was her favorite question when I first got here. We set out as an office of 3 to build a next generation platform for sustainability at MIT to benefit both the campus and the field of campus sustainability and higher education at large. So we managed an in-depth listening tour in the early days, asking the question as to how can MIT be a game-changing force for sustainability in the 21st century. Some people thought I was nuts asking that question because we really just hadn't built this framework here. Maureen's nodding her head. But many of the examples I will share with you today stem from this question. Next slide. We also asked the question of what world do we plan for and how do we seek to achieve that? And this will be revisited in our panel on the horizon, and again, still remains very relevant as we look ahead to the next decade. Next slide. And the third foundational question that we asked over and over again, and also continues to be relevant as we head into the next decade, is what are we solving for? Next slide. But in light of this question, I think one evolution we've all had, which is becoming savvier at asking the follow-up question to this, which is, are our solutions causing additional issues that we were remiss to ask earlier, such as the impact on marginalized communities, unanticipated human health impacts, new forms of extraction that we hadn't anticipated. So those are just examples, but that's what we encourage you to think about as we do our MITOS 2.0 input from all of you, is to make sure we're asking that full set of questions. What are we missing? Please tell us. Next slide. And lastly, this is so important, and you'll hear about this on the next panel, is what are we modeling at MIT for our students, for our staff, and for the world? So this is at the heart of our work and the connective tissue between campus operations and the educational mission. So keep all of these questions in mind, and I think what was fun for me to go back in preparing today is that all of those questions we're asking are still relevant today. Next slide. When we set out to establish a program, keep going there, just to the, I forgot, sorry, I thought I got the animation out. I'll talk through this. But when we set out to establish a program, I created this, you can put your own adjective in this, comprehensive flow diagram to capture the complex and systems-based approach we were going to need to set up the most effective and impactful program at MIT. So if anybody needs a moment of nostalgia to see this, take a moment to yourself, because many of you in the room today may recall this because I presented this all over campus. I was so new, but I was saying, listen, this is how big we have to go. But thank you for putting up with me in those early days. But we've come alive from this. I mean, this is the platform that enabled us to go big and broad and build our foundation. And so the purpose of this approach, as awful as it looks, really captured the flows of campus and the breadth and the complexity of the challenges that we had to grapple with and figure out how do you found an office in this context. Next slide. So what came out of this is we eventually landed with a formative mission statement within the year that boldly placed us in the connective tissue in between these operational strategies and academic mission to transform MIT into a powerful model and one that generates just, equitable, applicable, and scalable solutions for responding to the unprecedented challenges of a changing planet. Next slide. And as we settled into this space, we formalized our areas of impact. As you can see here, we're still grounded in these 5 today, covering materials to healthy people, thriving networks, climate resiliency, and of course now a zero carbon campus. Next slide. We established our methodology and committed to the approach that required our priorities would sit at the intersection of operations, research, course engagement, with the intention and the need to serve all parties involved. This has provided the foundation for the campus as a test bed, which you will learn about in greater depth shortly. Next slide. And finally, we launched, thanks to the input from all of you, on a platform that's grounded in an approach that considers the scales of impact, in which we're committed to understanding the role of the individual, the campus, the city, the state, the nation, and the globe. And this is so relevant today and has really launched us into planning for a decarbonized campus, because you can't plan for decarbonization on the campus alone. It has to be in this context. So we completely set ourselves up, again, thanks to input, for success. This platform has been one of the game-changing frameworks that we've been able to offer to my field, to our field of sustainability in higher education. And many of our peers have since adapted this framework to inform their sustainability and climate action plans, and now using this same platform to inform their decarbonization strategies. Next slide. So in the end, our success is due to all of you in the room. The success of any organization's commitment to sustainability and climate leadership is due to the vast engagement of the community, a willingness to think deeply, critically, take risks, try something new, to collaborate and listen to various perspectives, to engage in rigorous analysis, seek impact, implement, and a willingness to course correct and iterate along the way. So please join us today to do all of those things and help us iterate as we look ahead. Next slide. The result of this foundation and community building led to a series of formative reports ranging from our initial set of sustainability working group recommendations in 2015, which lay the foundation for initiatives including a commitment to LEED Gold version 4 buildings to a comprehensive stormwater management plan. And we couldn't have done this without the engagement of all of our students. Next slide. All right. Next slide, excuse me. So these are all of the plans. There's examples. These can all be found online, by the way. So I'm going to walk you through the impacts here. In just the past 9 years, as a result of, next slide, the first plan that came out in 2015, we now have, next slide, over 25 LEED accredited buildings on campus with more in the design phase. Next slide. Here are some examples of these buildings across time. So it was this plan that really laid the foundation for so much of the work of those of you in the audience today that enabled us to look at stormwater management and really that would lead into our work on climate resiliency to ensure that we were upholding this commitment to institutionalizing a commitment to sustainable design and construction. All right, next slide. Concurrently, though, there was this campus-wide dialogue while this was going on that framed MIT's initial commitment to climate leadership and set our first greenhouse gas reduction goal to calling for the removal of number 2 and number 6 fuel oil in the power plant as one example. Next slide. But it also led to the publication of our first greenhouse gas inventory and an ongoing strategy by which to publicly hold ourselves accountable to the goal by publishing an annual update of progress over time. The example here today is from our hot off the press, thanks to the team up front here and many of you in the audience, to share our 2022 inventory. And as you can see, you probably have many questions as to maybe we went up a little bit this year. So this is the complexity of trying to manage carbon reductions in an ever-changing environment. Next slide. We then forayed into exploring the meaning of sustainable food at MIT in partnership with Dining and Division of Student Life, seeking an understanding and solution development that intersects sustainable food with culture, affordability, access, and equity. Next slide. An example of this ongoing work leads to an increase in access to low-cost groceries on and around campus. And after many years of creative dialogue and input, this food startup incubator was opened in the Stratton Student Center, now referred to as the Launchpad. Over 1,700 students voted. There were 3 finalists that emerged, matched to a kiosk based on cuisine, cooking, and serving needs. And if you haven't been, go check that out. Is W20 open again? If anybody in the audience, if anybody on campus would know the answers, anybody that's in the room today. All right, next slide. The Launchpad offers the MIT community more variety and healthy food options while supporting diverse local startup food businesses and create a more just, equitable, and sustainable food economy. Next slide. So in 2017, in an effort to measure to understand our impact by the numbers, we launched a first of its kind sustainability data pool available to all of you via Kerberos, providing access to sustainability data across the campus, ranging from energy, waste, and power to transportation and projected flooding. This continues to be a work in progress as we collect data. Next slide. And in 2018, we launched our first sustainability task force, next slide, which formalized our commitment to sustainability leadership at MIT in a manner that formally embedded our desire and commitment to operationalize integrate operations, research, teaching, and strategic partnerships into the foundation of MIT's commitment to sustainability. Next slide. So this called upon MIT to be an exemplar, a model, a generator of new ideas, an innovator, and a thoughtful partner to our neighbors and peers alike. Tough crowd, Steve, here I come. Next slide. And in 2021, MIT's ambitious Fast Forward plan for the decade created, virtually mind you, with input from across the entire community, next slide, this sustainability landscape, and it calls for action that is game-changing and an all-in moment. All of us are now working together to meet the world's climate challenge. The plan also cuts across, as you keep hearing, research, teaching, policy, and campus impacts. All in 10 years, we've been able to do that. Next slide. We're now committed to achieving a net zero by 2026 goal, to zero direct emissions by 2050, in addition to establishing climate resiliency and adaptation plan as we prepare for our already changing climate. Next slide. So I won't go through all of those, but the plan outlines a total of 14 commitments that we are in the midst of implementing. Next slide. Oop, sorry. In summary, we have empowered, go back one slide, 22 staff as co-leads, formally engaged over 30 faculty, tapped over 75 community members across several working groups and committees, launched a team of 12 students as climate action research team, as you saw earlier. And one key takeaway for today is that it's this organized, distributed leadership model that sets us apart from our peers as well. So thanks to those co-leads in the room putting the time into implementing these remarkable goals today. And for those of you who couldn't read it that quickly, these are all online, and we encourage you to look at the Fast Forward plan. Next slide. Steve, I'm on the last 10 seconds. In the spirit of looking back to look forward, I will return to the question that we framed our efforts almost 10 years ago, is how can MIT continue to be a game-changing force for campus sustainability in the 21st century? So please bring that with throughout the day. As we prepare for the decade ahead, I encourage you to reflect upon the robust foundation we've built, how considering the campus as a testbed can continue to advance our efforts about what is on the horizon in the context of the world, the nation, the state, the city, the campus, and all of you. Pretty close. Thank you so much. All right, so that's a lot to cover. You can find us throughout the day, and this is all information that we can share with you outside of this moment. So next